Hey, good evening. I'm Becky Padera, town meeting member and former school committee member, as well as president of Milton Access, Milton Public Education and Government Television. Welcome to tonight's election show with election results coverage and discussion. Tonight our show will have some new voices and more experienced voices. I noticed I didn't say old. Regardless of the results tonight, I congratulate all of the candidates running for elected office in the town of Milton. We have here tonight several panelists I would like to introduce. First of all, Jay Fundling has lived in town since 2006. He's been on town meeting for over 10 years. He's in his second year serving on the warrant committee. A big job. We have students here from our MHS debate team I'd like to introduce. First of all, Lawson Bowden. Lawson is currently a junior at Milton High School and the treasurer of the MHS debate team. In addition, he recently helped to moderate the town election debate forum on April 10th. Outside of debate, he is a member of the Model UN team, the newspaper club, track and field, cross country, and a local tutor for families throughout Milton. Lawson is super grateful to be here tonight and wishes every candidate running the best of luck.
So can you indicate which one of you is?
I'm Lawson.
That's Lawson right there, sorry. Tucker Corman here is a senior at Milton High School and the captain of the MHS debate team. Beyond debate, he is involved as Model UN president, swim captain, student government representative for his grade. This is his fourth year involved with Milton Access to help cover the town elections. But unfortunately his last, as next year he will be in Cleveland attending Case Western Reserve University. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
On the end, we have Sydney Burns. She's a current junior at Milton High School. She is the junior co-captain of the Milton High School debate team, and you may have seen her most recently as a moderator on our town election debate forum. Sydney is also the student representative to the school committee for the junior class and helps to advocate for student-led viewpoints. She enjoys learning about history and government and is looking forward to promoting civil action through her work with the school committee and town election. Sydney is super grateful to be here tonight and excited to share the results of the town election. And then last but not, of course, least, Kevin Gomes is secretary of the Milton High School debate team, along with participating in the Model United Nations Club, the track and field team, Tri-M National Honor Society, and is a violinist in the strings ensemble. So, first I'd like to introduce Beverly Denny, a current school committee, for tonight anyway, who's stepping down from her school committee position after 3 years. And just congratulate you and thank you for all the time and effort you've served on the Milton School Committee.
Thank you.
Just a couple questions for you, not really like the questions that our debate team would have asked 3 years ago. But what was your biggest challenge over the last 3 years?
You know, I think that the biggest challenge we had was the fact that the community at the time that I was elected was still functioning as a remote and hybrid environment.
Yeah.
And families had differing needs and trying to come up with solutions that were in the best interest of an entire community. We also had some challenges in terms of human resources that fortunately were resolved over time, but if it wasn't for the teachers that go to school every day and focused on our students, I think it would have not been as smooth as it was. So I definitely want to take this opportunity to thank them for their service in spite of the ups and downs of a world they could not control. They came back and showed up for our students, so thank you.
I would second that. I think being a teacher during that time had to be the toughest job. Very tough for our students as well. And I agree with you that it was tough sometimes because parents were thinking about their kids like, I need this, and not thinking that other people needed different things and were affected differently. And it was I think you guys did, the school committee and large did a really good job listening to everyone and trying to make the best solutions for the community as a whole. So thank you very much for that. What's your proudest moment being on school committee?
I wouldn't say there's one single moment, but I will say that I was very proud of people stepping up when they needed to. I took the time on my last very public school committee meeting to thank the various people who stood up and stood out for our students, whether it was getting space, getting an extra bus, getting a restorative justice coach. But when asked, our community rose to the occasion because they knew what was at stake, and they had very clear values about what was in the best interest of our students. So if anything, it gives you confidence that things can get better. When I first transitioned from my role in the private sector into public education, someone said to me, this is a game of inches. It takes a significant amount of effort to see very moderate change. And I hope that all of you have seen significant change in the district and for the better. And it would not have been as fast as it was if it weren't for people who stepped up and showed up at meetings when they needed to or voted when they needed to. So I want to yet again thank another group, those people who stood up when we needed them to.
That's excellent. I'm going to just ask if the students have any questions for Ms. Denny or any comments to make.
Yeah, Ms. Denny, is there like a certain quality or maybe focus that you think like the incoming school committee member should have?
There's multiple.
Yeah.
I think it's just really important to understand the opportunities and challenges in public education as a whole. It's very hard to be on the school committee without that background because you don't know what you should be getting or what is possible or what to expect. So I think it's very helpful to understand that. I also think, as has been mentioned, every election cycle, people who understand budgeting and finance, you don't have to be a genius. You don't have to be an accountant. I tell people all the time I'm not, and they think I am. But being able to understand at a macro level what's happening in Milton is very important. I know people have heard over and over again, Milton has a structural deficit. And it sounds very cliche, but the reality is we typically don't bring in enough money to pay our bills. And that's a real problem. And every year, whether it's fire and police or schools or the library or any of the myriad departments that we have, they are the ones who bear the burden of our inability to raise revenue. So being able to articulate those needs in a way that is accessible to the community is extremely important. And then last but not least, just having a level of empathy and care for the people that we're supposed to serve. Being very open and receptive to the feedback from students, teachers, administrators, and community members. If you can't listen and be objective, it's really hard to serve on the school committee.
Yeah. I know you just touched on a little bit the kind of economic challenges that the school committee must face, but what do you feel are kind of the most important issues to be addressed in the coming years, or biggest projects that you started but feel unfinished at this moment?
There are a lot. So fundamentally, we don't have enough revenue to hire the staff we need to do the job we know needs to get done. We were very fortunate to have some folks in the community begin to document our per pupil spend, and we spend less than almost everybody. We're like in the bottom quartile, maybe bottom third, top of the bottom third. We're definitely below the state average. And if we had those resources, we could do more for our students and our faculty. We can bring in instructional coaches to supplement what's happening in the classroom. We can bring in the administrators that we need to supervise and provide professional development. We could fund a new building that we need in this town. So the reality is, as I lose my train of thought, I would say that definitely that's one focus. Another focus is making sure that we're creating an environment where students want to come in and learn every day. One of the things that was I'm very sensitive to is someone who recognizes your experience doesn't have to be my experience in high school, but being able to understand what brings students joy in school. You know that you're there to learn. We all know that that's our primary purpose, but what makes you come to school every day? I think just listening to all of your clubs and activities, that's a place of joy for you, or else you wouldn't do all of that. But that's not the same for every student. So what does it take to better understand what motivates students to want to be there. And you may not reach everyone, but I think we can do a better job at trying to make school a place that's more than just a place of academic learning, but a place where our students are growing social emotionally, and they're finding it as a place that they want to come to on time every day and not miss a day.
I really agree with that.
Yeah.
I bet you do too, yeah. Anyone else? So I have to ask, what would you ever run for office like in town politics again? Or consider?
You know, I will say this. I plan on serving on town meeting just because I think every vote matters and every vote counts, and we're seeing that tonight. But I also believe that many of our departments actually need help in the community. Like serving on the school committee is only one way to have an influence in this town. Jay can tell you he's on the warrant committee, and his skills in math and finance have been vital to the community. And I think if he wasn't serving on the warrant committee, he would do it anyways. I hope to participate in getting increasing voter turnout, acting on issues of what is the environment that we're creating for our students. And I think that that's probably a better use of my time, as we have a great many wonderful candidates that are running that can do just as good of a job as I have done, if not better. I shouldn't have said it that way. I know that we have candidates that can do an amazing job, and I believe that I can be equally effective not serving in a public office.
Well, I again want to thank you for your service to the town, and I'm sure I don't speak just for myself in saying that, you know, in watching you and seeing some of the things you've done, that you're not only an effective leader, but a very inspiring one. So thank you so much, and I wish you the best of luck in whatever you do, and I hope you continue in town meeting or whatever way, because you're a huge help to our town.
Thank you, and thanks for having me, and I wish you all the best, and I look forward to seeing you on TV tonight.
Thank you very much.
Take care. Have a good night.
All right, so on to the election. We've got Jay here to do some stats, but first of all, let's just talk. We've got the contested races are Select Board, which is Michael Zulis and John Cohane, right? Planning Board, Meredith Hall and Matthew Morong. School Committee, Elizabeth or Lizzie Carroll, who's our incumbent, Daniel O'Neill and Amanda Serio. Parks Commissioner is Robert Levash, and Michael Vaughn. And then we have, what I find the most interesting is we have very contested races for town meeting members. I'm not going to read them all out because it's a long list and that would take up a lot of our time. But there's a lot of races where there's more than 10 people more than the spots. And that's probably one of the bigger contested precinct races we've had for a town meeting. So it's an exciting election night. So Jay, what are you looking? You're looking at the turnout for this year. Can you comment on that and maybe some interesting comparisons from previous elections?
Sure, let me try to share my screen. Host disabled participant screen sharing. That's not a good sign. But I will take a minute to talk about what you just said about the town meeting races.
Yeah.
Which I know last year seemed to be the fullest, most contested town meeting races I'd ever seen. And I apologize that I don't have the numbers, but it seems that this year is even more so.
Yep.
Before last year, we would often see town meeting races of 11 people running for 10 spots, or 9 people running for 10 spots, or something like that. So the good part of that was that it made it very easy for anyone who wanted to be in town government to be on town meeting with just a little bit of effort.
Right.
Now we're seeing much more contested races. Don't know what to think about that. It's good to have more people involved.
We have some young people running too, like fresh out of college, or like, you know, we've had in the past people from high school even run. I think that's really exciting. It helps you learn.
Well, I will tell you, one of your former colleagues from the school committee, Kevin Donahue, when he was a high school senior in Milton, he ran for town meeting and lost by only a handful of votes.
Oh, really?
So that's news to you?
Yeah, I didn't know that he lost. I'll have to tease him about it.
I don't know that. Okay, but as far as turnout, let me share my screen on what I have here. Okay, so the first slide I have is just talking about what we've seen in turnout in recent years. The last 2 years had fairly high turnout for the town elections. The normal town, April town elections are in blue. Last 2 years were fairly high turnout. They were almost 6,000. That was not quite as high as the override, which is from 7 years ago. That was a little bit over 6,000. That override was significantly more than most town elections. But as you can see, the MBTA vote that we had in February blew them all away.
Yeah, that's great.
9,500 people voted, which...
What's the percentage of that? What was the percentage vote?
I want to say that's 40-something or almost 50% of the registered voters.
Yeah.
And I'm getting preliminary turnout numbers from MATV. Now, don't hold me to these because they could change.
Yep.
But
we don't know in terms of when they're counting the mail-in votes and things like that. So
what I've heard, if what we understand about mail-in votes is correct.
You like that? Is that impressive?
Yes.
Yeah. Wait till you see what's coming next.
This year, very high turnout. So, don't take this to the bank until we get the final results from the town clerk. But if it's anywhere near that, it's going to be at least as high, if not higher, than the last 2 years, which were very high.
Right.
And one other slide to put things in perspective. So this is just putting in perspective. I said 2022 and 23 were high town election turnouts. So I'm just comparing the MBTA race to the presidential race and the midterm race from 2 years ago. Those both had even more people turn out. The presidential race was 90-something% of elected voters.
Yeah.
But if you can see, the MBTA race was about halfway between a very high town election and the congressional midterms. In fact, if you do the math, it was closer to being a congressional midterm than it was to being the town race. So we're coming off of a very high, very good turnout race 2 months ago, 3 months ago.
Yeah.
Coming off of that, coming into this town election, how is that going to affect this town election? I don't know, but
never know.
It had a huge turnout.
Unpredictable.
It does look like a couple thousand people turned out in February that aren't going to be turning out today.
Right. And why? And you don't know why.
Yeah, why?
Why and where? What precinct?
Yeah,
And
we'll be
what
learning
happens.
some of that, but not all of it tonight. So.
All right. Well, we're going to think about that a little bit and talk about that later. Students, let's start off with you. Some of the things that you've thought about from the debate on, but what did you learn from the debate? What are your favorite moments, things like that? What would you like to talk about?
First of all, I feel like it was just very nice to see how all the candidates were all so respectful of each other. Like, even though there were varying views between each one, everybody kept a very respectful and positive tone to the differentiating views. But I think clearly one of the largest ones is the MBTA zoning issue, and most of the people, or most of the candidates, had similar overall views, but it was just kind of little ideas for different ideas of how to improve it that kind of separate each one. And I don't know if you guys have other kind of points about it, but I thought overall it was just a really positive debate, public moderation overall. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely have to say the MBTA Zoning Act definitely has been very influential in this election. You've seen that with the Select Board and Planning Board and even School Committee. As it's cut the school budget, it's going to impact most committees in Milton in some way. And so I think that's definitely put a weird kind of spin on the election this year as each committee is grappling with how to deal with this. And then you can also see how the incumbents have managed that. I know Michael Zulis talked about how he was responsible for hiring the legal team, and Dr. Elizabeth Carroll was talking about how she has experience with that in terms of the smaller budget that we'll have next year. So it's definitely interesting to see how the community will respond to that.
I agree.
Well, and I think that we can already see some of the effects of the community's response in that we have 2,000 more votes. Again, still preliminary, but 2,000 more votes than last year's election. The community obviously is responding to the MBTA Zoning Act and does want to see the effect that it has in their town government, who's running, all that obviously has changed, and there definitely is a big community response to this February election.
I also think that's kind of represented in all the just general increase in votes, obviously, because I think the MBTA kind of zoning area kind of affects all the other, like Sydney was saying earlier, it kind of affects all the other kind of areas of life, like the select board and school committee. And I feel like Lawson was saying that they had a lot of similar points, but I actually kind of think contrarily, there was a lot of like distinctions I think the candidates had. Like, for example, Lizzie Carroll, she kind of ran on that. She led the union compromise, and she kind of led on that platform because she was the incumbent. Amanda Serio, she focused on special education because one of her children is outsourced. And then Daniel Neal is kind of like the business and the economic side. So I think there were just a lot of different viewpoints, and I think that was represented with the increase in votes because I think the people of Milton had a lot of more options, I think, this time around for who they wanted to vote for.
I agree, and I think that sometimes you don't know, like we were saying, and you're saying the same thing. It's like that issue can affect it, can go up, and then all of a sudden another side of it can come back and say, well, we can't let this happen, but then there's other issues out there too, and you never know who's voting for what sometimes. There's also the school building committee trying to build another school, and that was a large issue last year. Is that still around, or did this take over? What are your thoughts on, because you did have some questions on the school building and whether there'd be an override and who was for that and what that would mean. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, well, we all asked, like they were all in favor of building the new school, right? But I think they all, each candidate had very distinct views on like the short-term effects or short-term kind of solutions to what we can do with overcrowding. Mm-hmm. And I think they offered a lot of different viewpoints, but they all kind of agree that a new school needs to be built. And again, Dan O'Neill kind of talked about, the economics of it and how we just simply don't have the budget and we need to get the budget for it, whereas the other two kind of just focused on, again, those solutions like the third floor renovation and stuff like that, just to kind of help the students alleviate all the pressures that are on them right now. But again, they're all still in support of building a new school.
Yeah, and building off of Kevin, I think it's also interesting to see how they kind of went off of that in terms of like there were talks of renovations on Cunningham's top floor due to at least a shortened budget for the foreseeable next few years. Mm-hmm. And so I think that that's definitely important to take into consideration because obviously Milton does have an overcrowding problem in its school, and all of the school committee candidates understand that and are in favor of some measure to either renovate or build a new school. But I just definitely think how it's interesting as to where their short-term solutions, like Kevin said, lie.
And a really good thing too is all of the candidates were just realistic. I feel like it's a nice thing to think that like we could have this increase in budget and spend all these things and kind of build the new school and even more, but I feel like all the candidates kind of realized that probably we wouldn't have as big of a budget as we would hope. So they kind of talked about how we could work within that small budget to kind of address specific issues, which could, as City talked about, renovating Cunningham or even starting to make plans about building the new school. So it seems like all the candidates just very much like know the issue and how to address it.
So yeah, like back to the point of your question, I think, yes, the idea of building a new school is still an issue, but I think just that the focus has shifted from should we build a new school to how. And I think where in years past where it's been what's the reasonability of building a new school, how are we going to be able to do that logistically, is there that much of a necessity for it? I think that the overpopulation and the continual growth of the population of Milton has shifted the discussion from is it a necessity to it is a necessity, but how are we going to accomplish it?
Well, that goes kind of more to a candidate's competence in terms of everybody wants to build a new school, but which candidate has the answer to how and why, right? And so how do you figure that out? And you ask those tough questions, and I think you guys did a really good job at that debate doing that. So short-term solutions to tide you over, and then how are you going to get that school built? How will you pay for it in the budget? And where will you find that money, and what kind of skills have you had in the past to show you can do that? And those kind of questions are great questions that you guys ask. So I think that's a great lead in to the next thing. So we have all these candidates running for town meeting in all these precincts, and that could be affected by all these issues we spoke about. How do you think that will affect the turnout in the election? And that could be that you can answer that too, Jay.
Yeah, I definitely think the abundance of candidates running will definitely ensure that there are a lot of different viewpoints to be heard, at least from what I've understood from previous conversations. So I definitely think that that will draw in more of the Milton population, which I think is beneficial. And we've already seen this. We also know that the recent override of the MBTA Zoning Act has been influential. And then I also think that this abundance of candidates will also be very helpful in increasing voter turnout.
I think it's also not just about voter turnout, but like with the huge increase of people running for town meeting, like there are so many people that just want to get involved, whether it be at the polls or like in positions. Like I think that the discussion goes beyond are more people voting and why are they voting to why are more people running for offices. And even if it's, you know, school committee or town meeting, like there's a massive push for people to be in positions of town government, and I think it does go back to MBTA zoning. I think that played a huge part in people wanting more of a say in how our town runs things. And yeah, I just think that there's not just a massive push of more voting turnout, but also just a massive push of candidate turnout as well.
Yeah. Oh, you can go.
No, I think you made a good point. And I think one thing that has increased interest, not only the MBTA, but also last year with the land swap for the school.
Absolutely.
Whether you're for it or whether you're against it, it needed 2/3 of town meeting, and it got exactly 2/3 of town meeting. Exactly. If there had been one person who wasn't there, or one person who voted a different way, that would have gone a different way. So whether you like the way that went or whether you don't like the way that went, you see the impact of every single town meeting member. And also, getting a bit more in the weeds, I think it affects the turnout because town meeting races, like if there are 10 spots, the difference between number 10 and number 11, that can easily be
Just a couple
one
votes.
vote,
Yeah.
5 votes, 10 votes, easily. I mean, we always say your vote matters. Sorry, your vote is not going to determine the president of the United States. It's just not. And your vote is not terribly likely to determine even a select board, but your vote by yourself can determine a town meeting race. So, sorry, Kevin, you had something you want to say?
No, I was just going to add on, like, there's definitely a correlation because I feel like there's so many issues going on in Milton. Like, we were mentioning the land swap, the MBTA, all that stuff, like now, all that stuff that's going on right now. So there's definitely a correlation between the increasing issues and just the increasing involvement that the people of Milton want to get in, and they want to see, like, their policies change. Obviously, we saw there was a huge voter turnout for the MBTA, and so that obviously showed that there's a large opinion over yes, no, and just what's to be done with the MBTA. So I think that's obviously shown with the increase in voter turnout, and I think it's only going to continue to rise in the coming years if we don't figure out what to do with the MBTA situation and the other problems that are occurring in Milton.
And I think on that same point, right, like Kevin mentions overpopulation and population growth, the problem is that these aren't necessarily new problems to Milton, right? The whole reason we're building a new school is because this is a problem that's been compounding over the past years. I think another influence on why so many people are turning out now is because it has been a problem for so long. And I think the more that we say we want to make solutions, whether or not they're feasible, I think a lot of people want to have a direct say in, like, I want this to happen, I want this change to happen. So whether that be influencing the people running or voting, I think that the just accumulation of problems that haven't necessarily gone away is really influencing people to turn out and participate in town government.
And then leading off what Tucker said, I think you also touched on this earlier, we're seeing so much more turnout with young people, and there's probably many factors that influence that, but I think it's so largely because they've probably been in Milton, they've probably gone to high school with this overcrowding, they know exactly, or they're probably more in tune to all these issues, and they actually want to make change, and they want to be able to voice their opinions more than just like older people who maybe not wouldn't have as much firsthand experience with that. So just all the views and all the different opinions, everybody, I think that's also kind of leading off of to the point where the voter turnout is so much larger. It's just because everybody can elect someone who can voice their opinions and get change actually done.
I think that's a great point, and it's very important for young people to get involved, because some of these policies are going to affect you more than they're going to affect Jay and I. Will probably be living in Winter Valley by then. I did get word that one of our precincts is in the House, but they're not ready to report it just yet, but they're going to let us know in a few minutes. So I want to just be aware of the limited time we might have left. Jay, do you want to put up some comparisons that you wanted to highlight? Because the kids seemed really impressed with your graphics. I wouldn't want them to miss out.
Sure. I'll do it sort of quickly.
No, you don't have to be quick. I'm just giving you guys a heads up, because at some point they'll probably have us cut off.
Okay. Whoops. Let me get to the. So I did some correlations between some of the results we've seen in previous years by precinct. So what do I mean by correlation? Well, here's an easy example. 3 years ago, Miss Carroll and Miss Denny ran for school committee, and they effectively ran together. They said, vote for us as a ticket. You can see the correlation is almost 100% by which I mean in the precincts. When one of them did well, the other one did well also. As opposed to on the right-hand side, one of the people they ran against, the precincts where one of them did well, the other one did badly, the correlation is almost negative 100%. Okay, so that's an example. So what else can we see? Well, two people who ran 3 years ago and are running again, Lizzie Carroll and Rob Levash. They didn't run together 3 years ago, but they still did generally well in the same precincts as each other. They got a 78% correlation. Okay, so that's something. What more can we get, though? Well, we can look at two people who ran in different years and are now running for school committee. So 3 years ago, Lizzie Carroll ran. You can see her vote by precinct in blue. And 1 year ago, Dan O'Neill ran, and you can see his vote by precinct in red. And you can see their correlation is negative 90%. That's almost negative 100%. That means where Lizzie Carroll did well, Dan O'Neill did badly, and vice versa. What do we mean? What do we take from this? I don't know. Will we see this tonight? I don't know. But it does seem like Miss Carroll and Mr. O'Neill are drawing from different sets of voters. So this will be interesting to see tonight. What do I have next? Oh, and then I did a correlation not only between people, but with the MBTA vote. So I looked at the no vote for MBTA, because that's the one that won. And I said, okay, what about Miss Carroll and the no vote, which won the MBTA? And there's a almost perfect negative correlation. Where Miss Carroll did well 3 years ago, the MBTA no vote did poorly, and vice versa. So we all know that no took the day a few months ago, and Miss Carroll is drawing from a different set of voters than voted no. Is that a sign of what we're going to see tonight? I don't know, but I think it's a little interesting. Let's continue on the same note. Miss Hall ran 3 years ago for planning board, and I think it's safe to say she was, in the past year has been closely affiliated with the group that voted no on MBTA. I don't mean to speak for Miss Hall, but I think that's the case. And so did she have correlation with the people who voted no on MBTA? Well, it's 50%. That's a positive correlation. That means in general she did better where people voted no on MBTA. It's not terribly strong, but then again, this is Miss Hall running 3 years ago, and this is the MBTA vote from 2 months ago. Will her vote be more strongly correlated with voting no on MBTA tonight? That's something I'll be interested in. And the last one I have to show is from Mr. O'Neill running last year, and the MBTA vote from a couple months ago. Now, Mr. O'Neill, he ran for schools. It was a year ago. It was before MBTA was an issue. I wouldn't have expected it to be a high correlation, but it's almost 90%. Mr. O'Neill did well last year in the places that voted no and won the day a couple months ago, and he did poorly in the places that did poorly. So is that a good sign for him tonight? It might be. We'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah.
So that was a lot of stats. I went through it sort of quickly. Something to think about.
Yeah.
Any comments on those?
I think it'll be interesting because a lot of the kind of correlation that we've seen, it would be from the MBTA Zoning Act, which was this year, but then it would also be kind of the votes from candidates, but that was way back in 2021. So it's interesting to see if since 2021 to now, if those correlations or those views by people have shifted while the candidate still remains the same person. So it'll be interesting what we see tonight.
I think another thing to consider is, as we have more voters now than a couple of years ago, is it people who were happy with the no decision, that voted no, that want to continue that kind of streak, or is it people that are really upset with the no vote that are going back to send a different message? So who knows whether or not like the no votes and people correlated with them will do well. I think that there is a strong case for either side to say like, well, people voted no and more people voted no, so more people are going to vote for those correlated people, as much as you could say that people were unhappy with the vote, because I know it was very divisive, and so that is something that I don't have the answer to, but is something definitely to look at and to be interested in.
So getting to that, at the end of the night, tomorrow, the next day, how will we know if people, where people stand on the no vote now? Will we look at the planning board race to see what people think of it? Will we look at the select board race? Those seem to be the, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, again, I don't have any perfect answers. I think that you definitely could look better at the planning board, select board, where those are definitely more, those positions are more aligned with the MBTA vote on whole. But I think that you can look to correlations as a whole and see if people are voting with their no votes or with their yes votes. I think that this is such a deeply rooted topic throughout all the elected positions, as we've already established. So I think that there's definitely going to be a piece of it in every vote, whether it be parks or planning board. So I think there definitely will be some correlation that you can see as a general trend throughout the election. But I think, yes, looking at like the more, the positions more closely related to the MBTA vote will have a clearer say in what was swaying people to come to the polls tonight.
Yeah, I think it's too how passionate people are.
Yeah.
Some people might be, oh yeah, if I knew it, I would probably be, there's some people very passionate on the other side. The vote was very close, obviously, but whether people are still feeling that passion and want to come out, and they're voting for a different thing. That vote's over. It's the people, so they might have a connection with that person. They just disagreed with them. You don't know. It'll be really interesting what you draw from it and what you think of it. It's kind of fascinating. I love those kind of numbers, but it's just how they tie in. But any other thoughts on that?
I mean, I think it just kind of speaks to the, all the correlations that we saw. I think it kind of just speaks to the polarization that's kind of occurring right now. And like you were saying earlier, I think just that passion that's occurring right now, and I think it's evident also with the thing you were talking about earlier, how there's all these candidates running for town hall meetings and that 10 versus 11 versus that 10 versus 9. I think the people of Milton, they want to say in this MBTA, and I think just that division is also evident in the different campaigns that all these candidates are running, and how they're each kind of, I feel like, appealing to a certain audience in hopes of kind of garnering the most amount of votes so that they can see what they want to see through. For example, if they're supporting a yes or a no ban. So I think that's just speaks to something like that as well.
Did any of you go out? Did you see any of the voting polls and booths? Did you experience anything, see anything that you noticed that you probably looked at a little bit different now being involved in politics a little bit more? Did you notice anything that you want to talk about?
I definitely have to say I was by Cunningham for a good part of this afternoon, as I live right by there. There was definitely more cars around, just more traffic than I'm used to for a normal election, which definitely speaks to what we've talked about before with high turnout. And I just hope that it's representative across the town. It as we talked about earlier, it'll be interesting to see whether that was just in, for example, my specific precinct or others as well, and whether that will determine who's most likely to win an election. Yeah.
Anyone else?
Yeah, it's really interesting that she's kind of talking about the different divisions that are occurring in Milton, because the MBTA is kind of affecting more the traffic maybe in East Milton and the traffic around the square. So maybe there's potentially more voter turnout there, whereas West Milton maybe supports it more. So I think that's also kind of interesting, because there were also still a lot of, when I was at the school, in the later afternoon, there were also still a lot of cars turning out for the vote before it was shut down for a little bit because of the flood. But I think it's also interesting to kind of look at the different areas that are being affected by all the issues that are occurring right now.
Yeah, and like Kevin was saying, it'll be interesting to see like the areas that are, like I said, like more affected by the MBTA zoning act. If the people in those areas either turn out more to vote in a larger percentage or have a different view than other areas. So yeah, it'll just be interesting because we haven't really, of course, none of the results have come in, but this is like the first like whole like yearly election since the MBTA zoning act was voted on. So it'll just, like I said, be interesting to see how those ideas have shifted in the past year.
Well, go ahead.
Kevin, you mentioned the flood.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if everyone watching
Yeah.
at home knows what you're talking
I
about.
was just going to
Oh,
say,
yeah.
we have to, because it was heard about town. There's a
Yes.
flood at the high school.
There was a small
a
flood.
fire tornado,
Yes.
is what I was told, but I didn't understand what that meant.
Still
so why
don't
don't you give us
understand what it means.
It sounds a lot more interesting than it is.
Yeah.
Okay.
From what we understand from rumors, there was just an incident where fire, like the sprinklers were set off, and that just caused some flooding, which could have been harmful in the gym, which is where voting is being held. However, from what I understand, it's under control, but the high school did have to be closed for part of the afternoon, which might affect voting and turnout.
But luckily it was only for, I think it was only like 28 minutes, so luckily it didn't affect too much of the voting, which is good.
Okay, we're actually been told that our results are coming in. So very exciting what you guys can watch, but we're going to close this out. I just want to say...
It will be another minute or so.
Okay. Which is good because I have a few things to say and a few people to thank. First of all, I was about town as well. I'm sure you were as well. I actually noticed in person with talked to a lot of people from both sides of both issues, and I have to say I had only nice things to say about the interactions that I saw between everybody and the waves and the enthusiasm of people voting. So I think Milton is still a great town to be in and to participate in, and I hope all of you guys consider running for town meeting when you're able and think about it, and let me know if you do. I'll be glad to hold the sign for any one of you. You can call me. So just one thing before I forget. We're talking a lot about supporting the Milton schools. Milton Foundation's having an event this week, and there are still tickets available for anybody out there that would like to go. You can go on their website. They do great things for our schools, so we'd love to come have you there. I'd just like to thank you to my guests. Beverly Denny, who came here tonight to be thanked, Jay Funling, Sydney Burns, Lawson Bowden, Tucker Corman, and Kevin Gomes, and to the crew at MATV for tonight's show. I want to thank Mike Lynch for helping me out plan this show. He's the man behind the curtain at all times, helping with the show, so I thank him. And I'd like to just say, really good luck to all the candidates running. I'm sure you guys would feel the same. It's a harrowing process. They went through your questions, which were the toughest. I've heard they were the toughest debate that there was. Any last words about the debate or the candidates or anything you guys would like to say? You guys were great tonight. This was probably one of the best. We run a lot of really good election shows, but your conversations and your topic questions were just right on. So please stay involved. We hope to see you the three of you next year. Tucker, best of luck in college.
Thank you.
All right, so I think we're ready to sign off.
Yeah, I don't know if we're going to hear from our town clerk quite yet, but it'll just be a minute or so.
Yep.
And what you at home should expect to hear, you'll hear Precinct 4A, then you'll hear Precinct 3, then you'll hear Precinct 2.
All right.
And then the other precincts as they come in throughout the night.
Good luck to all the candidates, and we're excited to hear how the results turn out. Thank you very much, and good night.
Thank you. There's the camera.
Hi, everyone. Shane Brandenburg, Executive Director of Milton Access. Just wanted to get a little announcement here. We're still just waiting for some numbers right now. Thank you for watching. Thank you for staying tuned. And the second they come in, we'll let you know. Thank you. Okay.
Good evening, everybody. I'm going to read the precinct results according to the times that they came in this evening. First, let me apologize if I mispronounce anybody's name incorrectly. The first precinct will be precinct 4A. The total for 4A is Michael F. Zulis, 131. John Christopher Cohane, 54. Town Clerk, Susan Galvin, 120. Board of Assessors, C. Robert Reitz, 92. School Committee, vote for 2. Elizabeth Marshall Carroll, 138. Daniel Matthew O'Neill, 45. Amanda H. Serio, 131. Park Commissioner, Robert C. Lavash, 130. Michael Patrick Vaughn, 43. Board of Health, Laura T. Richards, 105. Trustees of the Public Library, vote for 3. Paul Sitten Hayes, 115. Jamie Lee Lavash, 128. Susan Edith Doyle, 107. Trustee of the Cemetery, and that's a 5-year term, Joseph Martin Reardon, 111. Housing Authority, also a 5-year term, Lee B. Carey, 98. Planning Board, Meredith M. Hall, 58. Matthew R. Morong, 121. And for town meeting. And again, this is just the results for precinct 4A. Alexis Bergeron, 131. Joseph W. Chamberlain, 104. Anthony John Chicello, 125. Jill Eden Clark, 116. Marita Manning Cronin, 114. Carolyn A. B. Ferguson, 40. Joseph R. Madungo Jr., 48. Kathleen A. Potter, 123. James Anthony Quinn, 38. Paul Sitten Hayes, 91. Genevieve D. Martland, 112. Okay. Now I'm going to read for precinct 3. That was the next precinct that returned results. Okay. Member of the Select Board and Surveyor of the Highway, Michael F. Zulis, 416. John Christopher Cohane, 330. Town Clerk, Susan Galvin, 508. Board of Assessors, C. Robert Reitz, 387. School Committee, vote for 2. Elizabeth Marshall Carroll, 448. Daniel Matthew O'Neill, 343. Amanda H. Serio, 354. Park Commissioner, Robert C. Lavash, 400. Michael Patrick Vaughn, 286. Board of Health, Laura T. Richards, 431. Trustees of the Public Library, vote for 3. Paul Sitten Hayes, 407. Jamie Lee Lavash, 420. Susan Edith Doyle, 437. Trustee of the Cemetery, 5-year term, Joseph Martin Reardon, 424. Housing Authority, 5-year term, Lee B. Carey, 393. Planning Board, Meredith M. Hall, 421. Matthew R. Morong, 312. And for our town meeting members, and this is for 10. J. Fundling, 336. Virginia M. Donahue King, 244. Philip Stanley Matthews, 309. W. Paul Needham, 249. Mary Elizabeth Reif, 241. Catherine W. Smith, 310. Pony Stackpool, 198. Ellen Stoddard, 312. Nicholas J. Tagney, 235. Leslie R. Will, 242. Kara Ann Verdue, 260. Erin McCarthy Donahue, 285. Ellen Williams Fisher, 277. Andrew W. Hanley, 175. Kendra Quincy Knopf, 256. Kathleen M. Lagan, 189. Frederick G. Monroe Jr., 139. Lucy Francis Rugo, 278. John E. Sheldon Jr., 188. And Elizabeth D. Stilger, 258. That concludes for Precinct 3.
Next precinct.
Next precinct will be Precinct 5. Okay. Precinct 5, member of the Select Board and Surveyor of the Highway, Michael F. Zulis, 276. John Christopher Cohane, 243. Town Clerk Susan Galvin, 401. Board of Assessors C. Robert Reitz, 312. School Committee, vote for 2. Elizabeth Marshall Carroll, 317. Daniel Matthew O'Neill, 238. Amanda H. Serio, 267. Park Commissioner Robert C. Lavash, 285. Michael Patrick Vaughn, 200. Board of Health Laura T. Richards, 323. Trustees of the Public Library, vote for 3. Paul Sitten Hayes, 276. Jamie Lee Lavash, 310. Susan Edith Doyle, 291, I apologize. 291. Trustee of the Cemetery, it's a 5-year term. Joseph Martin Reardon, 318. Housing Authority, again a 5-year term. Lee B. Carey, 298. Planning Board, Meredith M. Hall, 311. Matthew R. Morong, 200. And town meeting members, 8 members will be elected. John J. Cochran, 231. Brian G. Foster, 234. Vanessa Johnson Foster, 231. Dennis F. Cohane, 193. Alexandra Dodge Panarese, 207. Christine Marie Stanton, 273. Carol M. Stalker, 219. Nabil Adud, 135. Peter F. Mon, 148. Logan Curtis Miller, 121. Adam J. Oakes, 148. Thomas D. Sharkey Jr., 228. Christine A. Strout, 168. Fred Ming-Chu Wu, 167. For the 2-year term, one member will be elected: Ronald Cicchini Jr., 89. Stephen Redmond Ing, 51. Amanda H. Serio, 228. Rebecca L. Simons, 77. That includes precinct 5.
What's up next?
Okay,
What we got?
precinct 2.
Precinct 2.
Do you want me to give you a couple, or so you have
Just for them. Either one. See, you're the best part of this every time.
Oh, right.
Yeah, you really are. All right. And you can start with those. Thank you.
Okay. Precinct 2, member of the Select Board and Surveyor of the Highway, Michael F. Zulis, 565. John Christopher Cohane, 251. Town Clerk, Susan Galvin, 564. Board of Assessors, C. Robert Reitz, 432. School Committee, vote for 2, Elizabeth Marshall Carroll, 549. Daniel Matthew O'Neill, 244. Amanda H. Serio, 525. Park Commissioner, Robert C. Lavash, 530. Michael Patrick Vaughn, 221. Board of Health, Laura T. Richards, 469. Trustees of the Public Library, vote for 3. Paul Sitton Hayes, 448. Jamie Lee Lavash, 517. Susan Edith Doyle, 475. Trustee of the Cemetery, 5-year term, Joseph Martin Reardon, 461. Housing Authority, 5-year term, Lee B. Carey, 438. Planning Board, Meredith M. Hall, 282. Matthew R. Morong, 520. And for town meeting members, vote for 10, 3-year term, Catherine A. Fagan, 521. Deborah Marcia Felton, 452. Kristen Cosile, 288. James E. Mulligan, 374. Ada Polak Rosmarin, 466. Deborah Azard Savona, 423. Laurie R. Stillman, 444. Elizabeth R. White, 443. Ian B. Gregorio, 289. Megan E. Haggerty, 392. Janet Lee Lyons, 201. Timothy F. Lyons, 169. Jessica H. McDaniel, 355. Robert Alexander Milt, 222. Matthew R. Morong, 487. Robert E. Powers Jr., 215.
Could you repeat
Certainly.
Deborah Savona?
Absolutely. Deborah Azarad Savona, 423.
Thank you.
Sure.
What's next?
Okay. Precinct 1.
All right. You can just go whenever.
Okay.
They've got a rhythm down there now.
All right. Member of the Select Board and Surveyor of the Highway for Precinct 1, Michael F. Zulis, 364. John Christopher Cohane, 132. Town Clerk Susan Galvin, 399. Board of Assessors, C. Robert Reitz, 329. School Committee, vote for 2. Elizabeth Marshall Carroll, 375. Daniel Matthew O'Neill, 119. Amanda H. Serio, 321. Park Commissioner, Robert C. Lavash, 361. Michael Patrick Vaughn, 108. Board of Health, Laura T. Richards, 342. Trustees of the Public Library, vote for 3. Paul Sittenhays, 336. Jamie Lee Lavash, 376. Susan Edith Doyle, 353. Trustee of the Cemetery for a 5-year term, Joseph Martin Reardon, 353. Housing Authority, also for a 5-year term, Lee B. Carey, 334. Planning Board, Meredith M. Hall, 200. Matthew R. Morong, 276. And our town meeting members, vote for 10, 3-year term. Ruth Batopoulos, 322. Carolyn Cahill, 356. Regina Patrice Campbell Malone, 338. Joan L. Gankowski, 193. Ravi D. Jane, 209. Joseph Paul McGettrick, 303. Marion V. McGettrick, 336. Darnell J. S. Turner, 308. Haley M. Byron, 255. Alyssa Beth Cruz, 276. Boubacar Deme, 223. Cheryl Gale Flightman, 90. Julia Gardner Maxwell, 257. Cynthia Randall Needham, 187. Thomas Palmer, 136. Matthew J. Wacko, 114.
Who's Meredith's count?
Meredith, oh,
No,
was
for a planning board.
200.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And you tell me when we're ready.
What's the next precinct?
Precinct 6.
You're ready.
Okay. Results for Precinct 6. Member of the Select Board and Surveyor of the Highway, Michael F. Zulis, 309. John Christopher Cohane, 503. Town Clerk Susan M. Galvin, 557. Board of Assessors, C. Robert Reitz, 425. School Committee, vote for 2. Elizabeth Marshall Carroll, 381. Daniel Matthew O'Neill, 473. Amanda H. Serio, 283. Park Commissioner Robert C. Lavash, 251. Michael Patrick Vaughn, 502. Board of Health, Laura T. Richards, 452. Trustees of the Public Library, vote for 3. Paul Sittenhays, 384. Jamie Lee Lavash, 390. Susan Edith Doyle, 463. Trustee of the Cemetery, 5-year term, Joseph Martin Reardon, 502. Housing Authority, 5-year term, Lee B. Carey, 419. Planning Board, Meredith M. Hall, 532. Matthew R. Morong, 234. And town meeting members, vote for 10. Edward Farley Clark III, 294. Roderick M. Conley, 301. Daniel J. Gallery, 357. Julie Ann Joyce, 302. John Albert Kiernan, 343. George Albert Lambert, 284. Jean M. Lang, 349. Michael Saunders McCarthy, 316. Richard W. Shea, 300. Janice Riley Walsh, 324. Sandra K. Albright, 259. Sebastian Barbagallo, 275. Laurie A. Connolly, 270. Amanda Dayer, 295. Jennifer L. White, 321. Jessica L. Whitehouse, 358. Precinct 4. All right. Precinct 4, member of the Select Board and Surveyor of the Highway, Michael F. Zulis, 208. John Christopher Cohane, 168. Town Clerk, Susan Galvin, 276. Board of Assessors, C. Robert Reitz, 223. School Committee, vote for 2. Elizabeth Marshall Carroll, 229. Daniel Matthew O'Neill, 156. Amanda H. Serio, 204. Park Commissioner, Robert C. Lavash, 203. Michael Patrick Vaughn, 140. Board of Health, Laura T. Richards, 222. Trustees of the Public Library, vote for 3. Paul Sitten Hayes, 233. Jamie Lee Lavash, 226. Susan Edith Doyle, 219. Trustee of the Cemetery, 5-year term, Joseph Martin Reardon, 228. Housing Authority, also a 5-year term, Lee B. Carey, 208. Planning Board, Meredith M. Hall, 179. Matthew R. Morong, 187. And town meeting members. So this is the total for just Precinct 4. At the end, I will give a combination of 4 and 4A for the town meeting members. Okay. So, Alexis Pearson Bergeron, 213. Joseph W. Chamberlain, 198. Anthony John Chicello, 224. Jill Eden Clark, 204. Marita Manning Cronin, 260. Carolyn A. B. Ferguson, 130. Joseph R. Madungo, Jr., 100. Kathleen A. Potter, 203. James Anthony Quinn, 146. Paul Sitten Hayes, 182. And Genevieve D. Martland, 215. So the combined of 4 and 4A for the town meeting members is Alexis Bergeron, 344. Joseph Chamberlain, 302. Anthony Chicello, 349. Jill Clark, 320. Marita Manning Cronin, 374. Carolyn A. B. Ferguson, 170. Joseph R. Madungo, Jr., 148. Kathleen A. Potter, 326. James Anthony Quinn, 184. Paul Sitten Hayes, 273. Genevieve D. Martland, 327. Okay.
What we got next?
Okay, we got precinct 9.
All right. Good to go.
Okay. Precinct 9, member of the Select Board and Surveyor of the Highway. Michael F. Zulis, 286. John Christopher Cohane, 534. Town Clerk Susan Galvin, 577. Board of Assessors C. Robert Reitz, 440. School Committee, vote for 2. Elizabeth Marshall Carroll, 356. Daniel Matthew O'Neill, 485. Amanda H. Serio, 276. Park Commissioner, Robert C. Lavash, 298. Michael Patrick Vaughn, 429. Board of Health, Laura T. Richards, 467. Trustees of the Public Library, vote for 3. Paul Sitton Hayes, 390. Jamie Lee Lavash, 389. Susan Edith Doyle, 404. Trustee of the Cemetery, 5-year term, Joseph Martin Reardon, 481. Housing Authority, also a 5-year term, Lee B. Carey, 418. Planning Board, Meredith M. Hall, 529. Matthew R. Morong, 233. And our town meeting members vote for 10 for a 3-year term. Diane DeTulio Agostino, 427. Michael Joseph Brady, 368. Sean Patrick Fahey, 427. Mary E. Kelly, 354. Sarah H. Lovely, 354. Joseph F. Murphy, 336. Joseph A. Parlavecchio, 294. Robert C. Sweeney, 434. Sean Patrick Burke, 294. Jacqueline Bosworth Driscoll, 404. Frank Graham, 235. Bard Harajad, I am so sorry, 257. Marion Elizabeth Menai, 189. Robert A. McCaffrey, 243. Jordan C. Noons, 207. Jennifer M. Raymond, 258. Catherine Irene Tutuin, 237. And then for the 1-year term, we have Jeremiah John O'Connor, 111.
What was that last one? I'm sorry.
Jeremiah O'Connor.
1-1.
Well,
1-1-1.
111.
All right.
You are correct.
All right. Thank you.
Okay,
What we got next?
we have precinct 10.
All right. Let's do it.
Okay. Precinct 10, member of the Select Board and Surveyor of the Highway, Michael F. Zulis, 243. John Christopher Cohane, 119. Susan Galvin, Town Clerk, 265. Board of Assessors C. Robert Reitz, 211. School Committee, vote for 2. Elizabeth Marshall Carroll, 271. Daniel Matthew O'Neill, 82. Amanda H. Serio, 250. Park Commissioner, Robert C. Lavash, 282. Michael Patrick Vaughn, 64. Board of Health, Laura T. Richards, 231. Trustee of the Public Library, vote for 3. Paul Sitton Hayes, 216. Jamie Lee Lavash, 273. Susan Edith Doyle, 217. Trustee of the Cemetery for a 5-year term, Joseph Martin Reardon, 218. Housing Authority, also a 5-year term, Lee B. Carey, 214. Planning Board, Meredith M. Hall, 133. Matthew R. Morong, 214. And for town meeting members, 3-year term, 7 members will be elected. Michael Robert Brown, 220. John R. Flakes, 214. Beatrice James Cockrell, 160. Mary E. Keeley, 231. Jason Edward Touches, 192. Megan E. Barrett, 205. Spencer Kyle Johnson, 219. And Anthony K. McDermott, 190. For the 2-year term, we have David Freeman Cornish, 187. Okay. We have 2 more left. Precinct 8.
All right,
Okay.
let's do it.
Okay. Precinct 8, member of the Select Board and Surveyor of the Highway. Michael F. Zulis, 353. John Christopher Cohane, 447. Town Clerk Susan Galvin, 612. Board of Assessors C. Robert Reitz, 463. School Committee, vote for 2, Elizabeth Marshall Carroll, 426. Daniel Matthew O'Neill, 420. Amanda H. Serio, 323. Park Commissioner, Robert C. Lavash, 297. Michael Patrick Vaughn, 451. Board of Health, Laura T. Richards, 507. Trustees of the Public Library, vote for 3. Paul Sitten Hayes, 382. Jamie Lee Lavash, 396. Susan Edith Doyle, 467. Trustee of the Cemetery for a 5-year term, Joseph Martin Reardon, 530. Housing Authority, also for a 5-year term, Lee B. Carey, 468. Planning Board, Meredith M. Hall, 483. Matthew R. Morong, 254. And for town meeting, we have 10 seats available, and there are 3-year terms. So it's Michael Raymond Dermody, 378. Stephen M. Kelleher, 378. Mark W. Loring, 358. Deborah Ann Lynch, 415. Theodore R. Mowosa, 301. Robert Gerard O'Brien, 326. Thomas Patrick O'Connor, 289. Sean Patrick O'Rourke, 364. Caitlin Sweeney, 416. Monica Brookman, 257. Jim P. Davis, 264. Maeve E. Hart, 317. David John Humphreys, 273. And Christopher Schumatt, 289. Okay.
And that leaves 7.
Precinct 7, last but not least. Okay, precinct 7. Tell me when we're ready.
You're good.
Okay. Precinct 7, member of the Select Board and Surveyor of the Highway, Michael F. Zulis, 161. John Christopher Cohane, 653. Town Clerk, Susan Galvin, 564. Board of Assessors, C. Robert Reitz, 399. School Committee, vote for 2. Elizabeth Marshall Carroll, 338. Daniel Matthew O'Neill, 452. Amanda H. Serio, 220. Park Commissioner, Robert C. Lavash, 209. Michael Patrick Vaughn, 513. Board of Health, Laura T. Richards, 429. Trustees of the Public Library, vote for 3. Paul Sitten Hayes, 323. Jamie Lee Lavash, 323. Susan Edith Doyle, 446. Trustee of the Cemetery, 5-year term, Joseph Martin Reardon, 501. Housing Authority, 5-year term, Lee B. Carey, 397. Planning Board, Meredith M. Hall, 584. Matthew R. Morong, 173. And then for our town meeting members, there's 9 seats available, 3-year term. Elaine Janet Benson, 229. Kimberly Larissa Conroy, 331. Joseph Herbert Curran, 347. Sheila M. Dunphy, 242. Shannon Lee Haggerty, 295. Brian T. Kelly, 408. Sean Patrick Bentley, 444. Candace Erin Brown, 144. Kevin B. Chisholm Jr., 418. Cindy L. Christensen, 131. Nancy J. Costello, 215. Joan M. Fall, 283. Amy Beth Flanagan, 217. Kevin F. Goggin, 189. Jeffrey A. Goodman, 102. Mark David Croninger, 346. Warren G. Lizio, 266. Timothy Brendan Lombard, 127. Bridget Conroy Mastradia, 186. Hal Peter Munger, 159. Christopher J. Shirley, 194. And that concludes. I can give you a final total if you want.
Sure, you have that.
Yeah, I
All right.
do. Let me just grab it.
All right, you are unmuted.
Okay. So we have the unofficial results combined for all the precincts. Member of the Select Board and Surveyor of the Highway, Michael F. Zulis, 3312. John Christopher Cohane, 3434. Town Clerk Susan Galvin, 4843. Board of Assessors C. Robert Reitz, 3713. School Committee, vote for 2. Elizabeth Marshall Carroll, 3828. Daniel Matthew O'Neill, 3057. Amanda H. Serio, 3154. Park Commissioner, Robert C. Lavash, 3246. Michael Patrick Vaughn, 2957. Board of Health, Laura T. Richards, 3978. Trustees of the Public Library, vote for 3. Paul Sitton-Hayes, 3510. Jamie Lee Lavash, 3748. Susan Edith Doyle, 3879. Trustee of the Cemetery, 5-year term, Joseph Martin Reardon, 4127. Housing Authority, again, 5-year term, Lee B. Carey, 3685. And Planning Board, Meredith M. Hall, 3712. Matthew R. Morong, 2724. And again, these are the unofficial results. They will be posted on the town clerk website later this evening.
Can you just give me the vanishing bond again?
Sure.
That's what he said.
Thank you.
That's Park Commissioner total.
Park Commissioner total. Okay, so Robert C. Lavash is 3246. Michael Patrick Vaughn, 2957. Okay, and I do want to invite all the townwide candidates that won their respective election to come tomorrow night at 6 p.m. here at Town Hall for our swearing-in ceremony. Can't participate on your board until you are sworn into office. It's a really nice event. We invite and welcome friends and family and any of their election workers, and I hope to see everybody there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And just real